Hi, my name is Ed Beer Jr., and this is my multi-character scene drawing demonstration, Part 1, Clouds, Sky, and Fabric Technique. I'll begin with a variety of tools, starting with graphite pencils, using the 2H, HB, the B, 2B, and 4B. I will also be using a Sanford brand eraser, a kneaded eraser, as well as a sandpaper bar, and tortillas. These are paper stumps used for smudging. Now you'll be seeing in the next image a variety of different shaped heads for these tortillas. It's very important that you break in some of your paper stumps, or otherwise known as tortillas, so that you will be able to use those in smudging, both fine detail and wide areas. And we begin with the shading and blending the clouds and sky background. First, we have the complete contour line drawing. The title of this image is Trumpeting Sentinel, and this will be being used throughout the multi-video segment. Now I begin with my background. I always work from the furthest back perspective plane, working my way forward, top to bottom, left to right. Of course, I'm right-handed, so I would do that. If you were left-handed, you'd be using most likely right to left, so you're not smudging everything you're working on with your hand. I'm basically keeping the angle of my pencil strokes basically in a diagonal angle from left to right, moving lower left to upper right. And I'm being consistent when I'm covering in or blending in all of the shadowing tones for the background in the sky. I want to make sure that I have a pretty smooth and even tonal change going on, so that later when I smudge in or blend in with the tortillas, I'll get a nice smooth effect. Now in some places, like right now, I'm putting in a second layer of shadowing, and that's going to be important so that when I blend, I've got enough graphite on the paper. By the way, the paper is a 300 series Strathmore, which is a pretty much medium tooth paper, but it has some bite to it, so it'll take some of that graphite off the pencil, and you'll have some good size lead to work with. Now here I'm starting to put in the details of some of the clouds in the background, and I'm not being too concerned about those really subtle gradient tones. Right now I'm more or less working on keeping my light source coming from the right-hand side, shining into the left, and I'm just shadowing on the left side of most of those clouds as well as the left bottom. And I'm keeping a pretty consistent tonal grade. What I want to do is I just want to make sure that I have a deep enough value that when I use these smudging tools, I'll be able to blend that and I'll have plenty of lead to do it. Now I can always go back in later and increase the values and the depth of darknesses that I need to do. One of the things that in this particular drawing that I considered is I wanted these very bulbous cumulonimbus style clouds. Now here you can see I'm using my stump, the paper stump or tortilla. I've used one that has kind of a blunt point to it because I want to get into wider areas. I'm not too worried about fine detail. And when I shadow, or shade I should say, and blend with these paper stumps, I tend to go against the grain or the angle in which I drew them in the first place. So as I was originally putting in this shadowing, I was working from the bottom left up to the upper right-hand corner diagonally in my stroke. And now I'm kind of going in the opposite direction. I'm more or less working the upper left and moving down to the right-hand lower corner. And then I'm also changing it. I'm changing around a little bit because I want to make sure that I'm taking the lead and blending it in different directions to get a really smooth, continuous gradient tone. One thing that's really nice about these tortillas, these paper stump smudging tools, is that you can utilize them to really carry through some of those median gradient tones and those subtleties. You can blend them right in, and they do just a great job without having to worry about putting the graphite down for the finest little detail. You can really utilize these smudging tools almost as a drawing tool. Now as you can see right now, this is filling right in this background sky, which if it was in color would be maybe a dark blue or deeper blue or something to that effect. With the smudging tool, it just blends it right in like almost watercolor. And all this is being done just from the simple layer of lines that I put in to begin with, the basic filling that I did with the pencil. And I'm able to smudge and blend this right in all different types of subtleties. Now, one of the things you want to do when you're thinking about clouds and sky is also create multi-planes of depth. Just like you would see in real life, you'd have a lot of areas where the clouds would be further in the distance. And even if you were, as in this particular image, up on the top of a very tall spire, you'd still want to be able to see depth of clouds in the distance, and some clouds really big. And of course, this particular bird's eye view shows you lower planes down below and some of the middle planes and then even the higher planes of the sky. So you get to really play with a lot of different areas and give some real serious depth to your clouds. Don't be afraid to push that graphite to get those deeper, darker values. You can always go back in later on with a kneaded eraser and lighten it up, but you want to get the values from dark to light there. You need that spectrum. One of the most important things that I tell my students, and I see all the time in a lot of portfolios presented to me, is the lack of willingness to take that chance. There is a fear, if you will, to push that darkness. Or I sometimes see things that are too extreme and too high contrast. But it is important that you get a good scale of darks, mediums, medium highlights, and then finally your brightest highlights. Now we're going into shading, flag, drapery, and robes. Now I'm going to start off with my pencil work right in that flag that the knight is holding. I should say that the back of his harness is holding. I'm keeping in mind that the lighting effect that I have chosen is coming from the right-hand side of the page, shining in towards the left. So I'm making sure I'm shadowing on the left side of all those folds. And again, I'm not worried too much about the real ultra subtleties of those gradient tones, because I know as long as I have enough darks, the smudging stump or tortillon is going to help me along the way with putting in those mid-grades and gradients. But you got to be, it's very important, it's very, very important that you put in enough darks to begin with so that this thing punches out from the background. Now I'm working on the pole that the flag is on, making sure that has a deep enough dark value. Now we're going in with a much sharper pointed paper stump or tortillon. And you can see I'm now just taking the darks that I already put in there, and I'm just pushing it. I'm pushing that graphite and pushing it across the paper and giving it that soft, subtle blend. See right in there, there's the middle of that area of the flag where it was a little bit of a highlight. I could add just a teeny bit of gradient tone in there. And I finish it off with the pole. Now I'm working on the cape, which the knight has flowing in the wind. Again, I like to start off with darks. I like to go from dark to light. And what I'm doing right now is where some of the deepest, darkest shadows that would be cast just behind the knight, where the light would be most hidden, I'm going in with the most darkest values. Also, I'm working at the same time, I'm going over the contour line a little bit to bring it out a little stronger. When I first did the contour lines, this wasn't a concern for me because it's just a matter of getting placement. Oh, and by the way, I'd like to point out that this particular drawing was done from start to finish without any reference material. It's basically a complete fantasy piece that was made up entirely start to finish just on a whim of imagination. Obviously, many, many years of working with anatomy, studying different subjects. It's become a second nature for me to work. To see the completion of the robery and cape work, as well as the next segment in the evolution of this drawing, go to Part 2, Multi-Character Scene Drawing Demonstration. This is where we will start to work on the metal and chrome effects of the character of the knight, as well as some of the work on the martial eagle. Thanks very much. I hope you've enjoyed this first segment, and I look forward to seeing you at Part 2. Thank you.